Let me start. Manu, 2017, Thomas Weber said all of this. Between now, it's like 8 years since then. You must be doing even, and you mentioned it while you were talking. Mentioned, you must be doing even more fabulous things out of India now. AI, sustainability, automotive sustainability is becoming a big issue. Tell us a little bit about the work and tell us, India, the talent that we have, Lalit kept saying, our talent can create magic. Is that the case? Do we really have all that talent? Do we have to train them? What?
I think I'm going to go back to Lalit's quote, and that's really the dream. Knowingly, unknowingly, I think if you have the right mindset in the GCC, then you're waiting to transform yourself to the enterprise, like he said, right? So if you want to be Mercedes-Benz out of Bangalore, out of India, and you know that you need to literally do everything that headquarters can do. Give and take, right? Digital tailwinds more out of India, mechanical engineering more out of Germany, digital mechanical out of India, something else out of Germany. But you need to grow up to be the enterprise. And I think the journey of the last 8 years has been, or the endeavor has been, to be the enterprise. How do you do that? You basically end up, and as I call that inside the company, collecting the dots and connecting the dots, right? When we started 10, 14 years ago as a journey, I often used to tell my leadership, like those Sunday Herald newspapers, when you get those dots that kids connect to get a car out of it, hopefully, if they connect it right. Each dot is a competency. And, it's a point of time when you said, I know how to test, but I don't know how the chassis works. I know the powertrain, but I don't know how the door is to be designed. I don't know tolerance management. I can't do weight management, so on and so forth. You end up collecting each of these dots and connecting them. It's very true, and if Thomas Weber, by the way, he just called me last week for something else. He's retired. He's one of those veterans right now in the company. But right now, if there's one location outside of Germany that can put an entire Mercedes together, it's in Bangalore.
Wow.
Right? And I'm not saying it on stage because it just sounds good. Tomorrow, if there's a backup location, God forbid, with today's geopolitics, if something goes wrong, I say this too, please don't quote me outside, but I say this too, and I think we need some candid speak. If Stuttgart can't come to work for some reason, we can continue to develop a Mercedes out of Bangalore.
Wow.
Because every dot has been collected and connected meanwhile. That's the endeavor. That's like what Lalit said. You grow up and you aspire to be the enterprise. There are things that you miss.
You can't quote that?
Sorry?
You can't quote
No,
that?
you can't quote that yet. Thank you. Titi, have an eye on what Sujit writes, right? Copcom is always here to guard us. But going back, I think each one of us should aspire for something like that. We have different businesses, some easy, some tough, due to either the product itself, due to the business locally that allows you this opportunity or not. Like Sindhu mentioned her business. I have my challenges, selling luxury cars in India. But I think the endeavor is that. And we've come a long way in the last 8 years, to keep it short.
So what did you do? For talent, do you do a lot of upskilling yourself? Do they learn on the job? What exactly?
It's a bit of everything. I tend to focus more, given the mic, on the leadership aspect of it. I absolutely agree. Again, I think Lalit alluded to talent being GCC ready, to start thinking like GCC. But for me, the person who peddles the dream into the GCC is the leader. And he or she needs to have that aspiration. And let's admit, not all leaders are made for that mindset, that GCC mindset, to say, I need to do things for the world out of India. I think that's something you need to train them on if they can get it, or hire the right ones. Some of them drop out of that race because they just can't make it. But to have that vision, to see the future, and in a complex environment that GCCs are already, working with headquarters, to carve out a path for themselves and their team, consequently for the GCC and the company in India, that's a skill, that's a leadership skill. And I think, it starts with me, it starts from the top, and then you try to find that leadership set that can actually sell this dream, paint a picture of that to the teams, and then they grow up. Because you program the same, whether you're doing back office or front office. Python script is not changing. It's the way you connect the dots that are changing. And I think we have a set of leaders. I've seen some in other companies when we have visited them, who are able to connect dots in a very special way today for India. And let's agree, having moved from agriculture, missing the manufacturing economy, going into services and IT services, India desperately needs product leadership, product mindset. Just like we speak about infrastructure outside and what else that's needed for nation building, product engineering is a very, very important thing. We can't skip that. And GCCs today, knowingly, unknowingly, carry the baton that they need to bring this mindset, because there's another part of the world that's looking at products, for us, mobility, in very, very special ways. India needs it too. Today, if my people are involved in cutting-edge automated driving around the world, they're able to think in a mixed mode traffic like this, what do I do? Right? But the basis is, how does it work? First of all, in a rule-based system in China or in the West, in Europe or the US, and now how can I tweak that system here? Right? So GCCs are also a huge source of getting knowledge and information into the country on how businesses work, how product business works. So I think there's humility too in the business, where you're learning all of this, and then at the same time, churning out something new for the country.
Okay. Sindhu, Sirisha, on talent. Rajesh touched upon this concerning things that are happening lately, but tell us, what's the message to talent? How do they get up to speed to be in companies like yours? For the freshers, and what do you do internally to get them up to speed?
Yeah, I mean, maybe before I answer that question, Sujit, I just also want to go back to what Manu was telling on kind of you become the enterprise, you said, right? I also believe, Manu, that many times some of the practices that we do, we are taking it to the headquarters, right? So I'm talking also about next level practices that we put into place from here. To give you one concrete example, right? And I'll tie it back to the talent, because it's a little bit of how we kind of make sure that the talent of the future really understand. You said connecting the dots, and I think that's absolutely spot on, because many times when we have the young talent coming in, one of the fundamental things that we invest time in is to help them very quickly connect the dots, right? Because the onboarding, as we call it, is not like onboarding where you learn about the particular part of the portfolio that they're getting into and will be working on. But it's really about tying the larger strategy and kind of connecting the dots way beyond the areas that they will end up working on, right? And in that process also, we encourage to help, we push them to also question the status quo. And that is how some of the next level practices have also come up, right? And that, I think, is also very important, that you give that space and freedom to people to also experiment, fail quickly, try out stuff. But still, of course, I mean, they have their regular, what they have to do. And there, I think, is something where we put an extra edge. And one of the pieces that we have shared with you in the past as well, Sujit, is our a scholar program, right? Our scholar program is where students from BITS Pilani, as part of their master's program, they're spending the entire week on campus, actually, right? It's a system that is very common in Germany. It's the dual Hochschule system. Some of you might know about it, which we kind of brought in, and we brought in a system where scholars come in, they are actually working in different parts of our portfolio, understanding how, when I talk about processes, because for us it's all about helping companies like Mercedes, helping companies like Continental really look at how can we help renovate and reimagine your processes, and that's the kind of spirit that we want our teams to inculcate, right? So for us, it's really also helping them understand how a process like total workforce management looks like, because a total workforce management may not be completely managed out of solutions from SAP, but it can have any kinds of third party and other systems in place that help different parts of the process. But very importantly, knowing about that domain, knowing about the industry, knowing about how technologies can revolutionize that process is a big part of the emphasis that we put in as we get the young talent to come in, understand, connect the dots, and challenge the status quo. In fact, we get people to positions which of influence based on how much they have challenged the status quo and really managed to also change and bring new, and I'm not saying that it's always that they challenge the status quo and it's immediately implemented. That's not what I'm saying, right? But when it comes with really productivity gains, and I want to give you a concrete example, we have what we call as a custom AI adoption program, right? And the custom AI adoption program was a program completely where in the past, when we talk about co-innovation, of course, there was a way in which the investment would go in for co-innovation. And the team here completely challenged that, right? And we said, hey, very quickly, let us go into a very lean POC, because we wanted to kind of scale out how business AI was adopted amongst our customers. Because we all said, hey, finally, what matters is the number of productive customers using our business AI portfolio. And how do we do that? And very quickly, we said, okay, we put together a SWOT team, which goes into a customer. Doesn't matter if the POC is a success or failure, right? We'll build for even what the customer is not thinking. And that is the difference. It's earlier you go in, you say, okay, tell me what's your scope, we'll build for the scope. No. If you're in, I don't want to quote customers, but we had a team who went into a pharma company, and where they have thousands of components that go into production of one vaccine, right? I mean, you can think about one of those components are having a challenge because of supply chain changes, right? How quickly do you use generative AI to very quickly kind of see which other component could substitute for that particular component? Team built it within few weeks, right? And now today that's mainstream. That whole process of the customer AI adoption program is mainstream across teams all over the globe. So I think it's a multitude and multi-aspect things when we talk about how do we get that talent. I mean, it's easy to say future-ready workforce. There's a lot of time and investment and trust that goes into building that future-ready workforce. And I think the trust element, to your point, Sirisha, what you made, we don't see that. I think it also starts with that trust, right? If you want to make the change, then you have to also build the trust. You have to be willing to make those failures. You have to put in the investment, right? It's all has to, and to Manu's point, connect the dots to bring it to those outcomes we want to reach. So, yeah, I know we don't have too much time, but giving you a few examples, but I'm sure Sirisha will have more examples.
Well, I think most of us do a lot of the early training, for engineers as we bring them in. And like Manu indicated, the only other location that has a complete bank in India is probably the only bank outside of the parent location is in India, because you have most of the verticals represented. So what we try and ensure is that when we bring people in to whichever role and function, they're able to get a view of multiple of these, verticals that we have. Ultimately, for most of us, it's really about faster, cheaper, and better. I think, are you able to push a product quicker into market? And are you able to help with either removing the toil in the system, whether it is in process, or are you able to introduce something new? Like Sindhu just quoted, I think, challenging status quo becomes really important. But the way we've schooled many of our own, engineers, many of them don't ask those questions, right? So I think it's very, very important for us to go outside of the normal, sort of coaching and training that we give, because not many can stand up in a room, be alone in a room with a bunch of people that are not Indian and question status quo. That takes a lot of courage. I think that is a skill that we actually need to build out. And as I said, that's an ongoing exercise, because we really need to invest in them. For companies like ourselves, where diversity becomes very, very important, because 75% of payment choices are influenced by women. And if that is the case, we need to have a lot of women in our workforce. Do we have enough in the country? I think the answer is no, because there is still a lot of dropout post the 5-year period, right? Once they get married, into the family way and whatever else. Are we able to make it attractive for these girls to come back into the workforce 3-4 years down the line, where we are going to upskill them and bring them back into the workforce? Their peers would have probably risen to levels. Is there something that we can do for them? I know ICICI did something amazing after people came back from maternity break. Are there things like that we can actually do? I think are questions that we should definitely, ask ourselves, because that workforce is very important. Because, and I can give you an example of an automotive. If I don't think you had women on a design team of an automotive, because if that was the case, then they would have designed a place to put a handbag, perhaps, because we all struggle. You know, do you put it near your feet? Do you put it in the back seat? Do you put it in the seat next to you? Whatever. But all I'm saying is we need a lot of such, even when we're designing payment solutions and so on, because it's important to have a diverse workforce. I don't want to challenge that. I just know it's a problem.
Just one line. I think I found a customer. We can do it.
You have to go outside your normal coaching. You have
And,
to connect
and
the
you
dots.
do a couple of things, right? I mean, we do a no meeting Friday morning. So we say that's time we give back to people. We say that's your time. Please upskill yourself. If you need to learn something new, you know, please do. We have created innovation labs. We say come there, and you know, and that's outside our firewall. We can bring in a fintech or you know whoever and experiment there. But the intent is to fail fast and you know and move on to the next solution. So we do a lot of these other things, and I think that's important.
Okay. So diversity, very important. I'll go outside the normal coaching, connect the dots. Lalit, tell me, you work with a lot of GCCs. You know, I here on social media, I find a lot of traction for stories who say, okay, some GCCs have matured and are doing some innovative work and all of that, but the long tail of the vast majority aren't on that path and things are not very good on that side. What is your sense? Is it just a matter of time that everybody gets on a path where, like you, all of you said, and you also mentioned how the GCC becomes the company and all of that, and you literally mature enough to understand your company, do what the company know exactly what the company wants and all of that. What is your thing? You think everybody will mature over a period of time, or is there a playbook required for us to create for the larger community?
So, I mean, that's a very interesting question. I think there is a spectrum of sorts out there, right? They are near perfect GCCs. If there was any notion of perfection, they were set up right from the outset. There was advocacy and sponsorship at the executive level. Culture was foundational. They brought in the right kind of work. There was an alignment between the work and people, right? So you hire the right talent for the right kind of work. You cannot hire rocket scientists and make them do work that obviously does not commensurate with their capabilities. You need to have the right level of integration. You know, Target we spoke about. It was set up in 2005. It just keeps growing broader and deeper. And so those perfect models exist in the market. And at the same time, there are a lot of subpar, underperforming GCCs that lack one of these dimensions. You're not set right. You were set up to save money. You were mimicking a services company. You wanted to have control. You wanted to have better retention, right? So basically, they were not purposeful in some ways. I guess if there is a steadfast commitment from an organization to a GCC, you go through your ups and downs and you'll figure things right. There isn't a GCC that hasn't gone through that journey. Certain things go right, certain things don't go right. Like any other part of the organization, you go out and fix problems. And I guess that's the way, you know, things will work out. I guess in the not so distant future, we'll have a more homogeneous composition of companies that are behaving a consistent pattern, that are demonstrating a consistent behavior, let me put it this way, in terms of how enterprises work. So if you are a high-performing organization, the GCC is expected to be high-performing or higher performing. And if you have problems across the organization, you will have the same problems in the GCC. And sometimes it's okay, because there's less friction if, you know, mess talks to mess, right? Or chaos talks to chaos. So, and those are very, very important considerations in the context of a GCC. So I guess, there is just so much pressure from the environment, from the ecosystem. We're all sitting in a room, we are learning and sharing. And I guess that's another dimension that adds to companies getting better from an operating model perspective, from value realization perspective, and so on. So eventually, good days are ahead because we'll all force each other to just get better at the work we do.
Yeah, I just want to take a spin on that, agreeing to everything that he said, but just want to narrate a certain incident that probably gives us a different perspective on this. I had 2 auto GCCs who came in to say goodbye. They were exiting R&D in India, right? Both of them, one of them was even connected, was an engine partner of ours globally, so they had relations at the board level. And the board member who came in to sign off just paid a goodbye visit to us. Had a look at our operations for the very first time, and he had one compelling question in the room to me. He said, how the hell can't we pull this off? Being partners, they were not even operating out of Bangalore from somewhere else, but how the hell can't we pull this off? What did you do differently, right? And I think we sat to the board, and in a minute or two, I just told him, look, India has the same thing to offer to all of us. It's not rentals that differentiate us. You could be in MG Road, we could be in Whitefield, or vice versa. That's a small factor. We all pay nearly the same salaries. That doesn't matter. The overheads and the cost structure, there's a winning formula that all of us have probably cracked to keep things under control. It's not that. It's the same academia to which all of us rush in. We hire from each other. That's not the differentiating factor. And sorry for harping back on leadership. It's what you think about your GCC within the 4 walls, under that roof, that differentiates A from B, right? And it's that X factor from one GCC to another. One shut shop and another one is setting to thrive or wanting to go ahead. That's why so much of focus when I speak on that aspect of, you call it a GCC, and somehow over the years, entrepreneurship has been a term outside of GCCs. And I think all of us will agree that you need to bring it into the GCC fold and say within the roof of a GCC, if you can display a fair degree of entrepreneurship and have a vision for yourself, at the same time not cross that red line, that Lakshman Rekha with headquarters to say what you need to do, what can you do and what not, which I think Lalit also beautifully said on stage, to say, you're within the enterprise, but you have a line somewhere. That's the leader's job. That's the leadership team's main job, to define that, to recognize the Rekha somewhere, Lakshman Rekha somewhere, right? Before I misquote again, to recognize the Lakshman Rekha somewhere, decide how to stay within, at the same time keep pushing the boundaries. I think that's where the magic is, right?
I think I want to make 2 quick points, right? One, we are broad brushing this whole concept of GCC, right? So there are huge variations, SAP and Mercedes-Benz and a restaurant company or an airline or a hotel that's setting up a GCC, the considerations are very different. Second, there is this notion of, relative, maturity versus absolute maturity. What a Microsoft or a Google needs is absolute maturity, but what, a retailer needs is maybe a relative maturity. And relative to maybe the mothership, the headquarters, or to the peer group companies. So it'll be wrong to have, we have JCPenney in this room, being compared to an Amazon, right? Because that's not the intention, it cannot happen. There would be efforts, and that's the GCC opportunity. So I guess this relativity versus absoluteness and the tendency to broad brush. Everything is a GCC. But that's not correct. There are different kinds of enterprises, different industries, different markets, and so on, right? So that will play an important role.
Okay, I know we're almost out of time, but a quick last one. I met this person from Delhi. Of course, it's some loose connects to the government and all that. He was saying GCCs just use Indian talent and don't give back anything in return, He said, so we should tax them more and things like that. This might be some Delhi thinking happening. So you should be a little worried. So I'm just wondering, so we also want to tell these stories of Sindhu, you can probably take this quick one. We have just a minute left. But, in terms of what we do recognize that you do work with academia. Some of you are actually working quite deeply with academia on not just hiring talent from them, but also setting syllabi, their research and all of that. I think many of the startup entrepreneurs are coming out of GCCs because that's where they learn all that product engineering and all of that you all of you spoke about. Tell me, I mean, what can be done to communicate the message to the country at large that GCCs are not just here for Indian talent and trying to benefit the parent company, but also helping the larger ecosystem in India?
First of all, I want to thank you, Sujit, for events like this, because a lot of that work is based on the storytelling, right? I mean, the stories that you heard in the course of just the last 1.5 hours, right? Very powerful stories of the impact that GCCs are creating here in India, the kind of nation building that's happening, the kind of talent building that's happening, the kind of IP creation that's happening, the kind of products that we are all building and taking out there. And this is also why also the nasscom GCC playbook, right? What we have made available together with Zinov and others, and also what you're making available from. All these are important elements of continuing and driving forward that storytelling, because it's not enough that we say, oh great, we've done a great job, and this is why we need to come together, share those best practices. I always tell people the time that we took from A to where we are today doesn't have to be the same path for a newcomer, right? There's already so much out there that you can take. And to your point as well, even though if it's not a one-to-one map, there are so many things. You talked about bringing back women into the workforce. I mean, there are great programs out there, how we look at bringing back women into the workforce, already tried, tested, scaled out programs. Why can't we all just take it and run with it? Or adapt it slightly for. And so I'll go back to this point on, we all have our role to play in changing if there is a Delhi-based thinking. Rajesh, we need to fix that then. Okay. but it really, the onus is on us to really drive that forward. And as nasscom, we are putting in a lot of effort to do that. And thanks to you from Times to also drive a lot of that narrative forward, Sujit.
Thank you. I mean, the four of them sitting here, I mean, literally pioneers. I mean, the kind of things they've done, they all said the importance of leadership. I think all four of them have shown what leadership can do for the GCC ecosystem. So a big hand to all of them. Thank you.